Yo, what's good, family? Welcome back to another video. I'm back home so you can hear my voice, and the quick tuts has concluded, at least for now. And just so you guys know, I only do that if I have to be away from my home studio, just because I don't have access to a microphone. So it's something that I kind of do in between, or something that I will continue to do in between for whatever reason if I'm out called for a gig or something. But yeah, I'm back, and that was a really long explanation. So yeah, before I get started, just want to say, hope you guys like the new intro. Thank you guys for the 1K subs. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting me in this journey because I don't make money doing this aside from you guys. And also, if you haven't already, then join my Discord at the Fox Den, which I'm sure that I have a link that's always at the bottom of my videos. All right, with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. So, melodic content. I've done a few videos on how to make pads and how to make some cool stuff with resampling, but today's approach is going to be through the creative block that I've been suffering through, which I'm sure all of you do at some point, of not really being able to create interesting pads or something that is like interesting musically. And coming up with a drum pattern and then throwing a bass on it kind of is a little bit easier to do for me these days, but I want to kind of show you a reverse engineer way of coming up with some interesting results just by playing melodies, because that's ultimately where we can draw chord progressions from and ultimately like these neat instruments that I'm going to show you today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just play something in F minor. Something doesn't really matter, but we're just going to do that over across a couple of bars. Maybe. Okay, let's go ahead and turn this on so I can play in time. Okay, just because I don't trust my own playing, I'm going to not save this. I'm going to quantize that, hopefully into fourths. Turn that off because that's an annoying click. Dope. All right. So the next step would be to add in just a full amount of reverb. And actually what I think I'll do is use the Ableton stock reverb just because it not only sounds nice, but it's criminally underrated. Go ahead and turn the dry wet up all the way. You can add in a low cut if you want. We'll do some EQing later, but the point of this is to just make this as long and open as we can. After that, we will bounce this to audio and flatten it. And now we should have this really nice sounding long drone. So what we're going to do is actually reverse this and then do this process one more time. In order to kind of keep this, I guess, controlled, I think I might actually add an OTT. We'll see how it sounds first. Beautiful. You can already start to see the idea of where this is going. Then I guess if we reverse this again, let's see what kind of result we get. I think that sounds pretty nice. So we can throw that into a sampler now and put this as, I think C was the first note that I played anyways. So even though it's got an F in it, it should be, yeah. Now to make a pad out of this, of course, you want to mess with the envelope. So we'll add in some attack and then add in a ton of release. And now we have this cool pad that we can use to do something melodically with. And a lot of times, like if you have Omnisphere, and I'm trying to specifically do this without Omnisphere, but if you have Omnisphere, you'll find a lot of these pads that when you play different notes, it won't actually sound like it's quite in key. And that's because most of the time they're like this with chords. So if you play a fifth or a third or a seventh, then you might be able to get away with keeping these in key. And sometimes people want to make songs like that, which is like classical jungle, where people will just take those chords and then play across the keyboard with them. But that's a pretty neat way to get some neat textures. Let's see how that sounds an octave down. Oh yeah, beautiful. What we'll do again, I'm going to stick to the Ableton reverb, is add more reverb to this So that way it actually sounds like it's an instrument that can be played. Yeah, that's freaking awesome. Okay, so that's not a whole lot to that, but I want to show you guys a couple of other options that we can do. So part of the reason why I did this is why I didn't delete this is because we can actually do some more to it. So let's say we have one arpeggio that sounds like this, and then I guess on the next one we want to space this out so that way the reverb from the first one isn't interfering with this one, and we can do a different arpeggio that's still in the same key but just a different sound. So I'm going to play a couple things and see if I can find something catchy. Nice, everything is pretty close to in time. Not quite though. I love that snapshot feature, by the way. And then I'm going to do one more, maybe awesome. So now we'll freeze this again, and we have a couple of different variations. You can do this as many times as you like, but what we'll do is duplicate this and then flatten it again into here. Then, just as we did before, we need to make sure that we do that reverse reverb thing. So, and reverse it again. So in this particular case, we have 3 different chords. And they don't sound too much different, but this is just kind of for the case of demonstration. But we have a couple of options. We can either take these individual chunks and play this with reverb as an audio file, or what we can also do is add in or throw this into a simpler. Blah, come on. I know how to do this. And do the same functions where we add in our attack and our sustain and our release. And instead, we're going to find slices. We need to find the slice by region and move these over. And now we have some cool, basically, pads that we can kind of play back and forth in between that will only play on these slices. So, and it's a little bit quiet right now, but we can always, turn that up, of course, and then we'll add reverb to this as well. And then right now it's on trigger, so if I push this once, it's going to play through the whole thing. But if I have gate on, then it will only play as long as I allow it to. So I guess on this, you only have fade in and fade out. That's fine. Now that we have that, we'll add some reverb to this again. And we don't have to do 100% dry wet, but now we have some cool variations that we can just play on our sampler, which is pretty neat. So one final thing that I'd like to cover, I'm going to go back to this one, is the idea of using this and kind of reverse engineering this back into, I guess, a stutter, or I don't even know how to explain this. It's kind of like finding individual hits to create some kind of synth line, and you can do it with one chord, you can do it with a bunch of chords, or you can bounce the other ones out. But now that we have this piece of audio, we can kind of go into here and try to find these transients and see what happens. And what else I might do is I might quantize these to 130 seconds. And now I can see the transients a little bit easier. I couldn't even brightness. Okay. So now I can kind of go in here and drag these along to create some kind of interesting riff. And I can take that and duplicate this into now I have some kind of riff that's stupid, of course, but it's something that is kind of in context, and I can make a drum beat around this type of sound, which is a lot of fun to do. Of course, if I do my usual processing and make it just a little bit brighter, maybe a little bit of saturation. And then from this point, I can start to create that beat. And I think what I'll do is I'll just go in and find something. There we go. And that should be a snare. Okay. I wasn't able to tell how loud that actually was. Still a little loud though. Track delay. This is amazing. Boom, boom, boom. So the track delay is really awesome because you can keep everything on grid and then shift everything slightly, so you don't have to worry about doing like off-grid edits. It's really awesome. Go in here and make some stuff. There we go. I like that that's already in time. Warp this. Set this to loop. Now I can drag this and use any sample I want. Okay, so that's kind of out of time. Quantize these transients to like 16ths. Set this to 16ths as well. See how this sounds? And then I guess I want like a different pattern for each fourth count. So I'll go and zoom this or speed this up and find just a couple of other hits. But because this is already in time, it shouldn't be too difficult. Cool. And then this could be cool maybe if it was in reverse, but slow it down to like 12. Cool. And so we have this cute little drum beat that is not mixed at all, but and maybe on this one I want this to warp and go into 30 seconds. Okay. All right, this is all a little bit loud for arpeggio thing that we're doing, but now that we have this kind of section, we can kind of combine all of these elements and do something cool. And even if I wanted to just play this one, I still have this neat little texture thing on here that I can play above from that. So maybe I'll do this low drone. And I'll just record that out. And then we can add in a respace of some sort, which I'll just make one quickly just because it's not that difficult. you can kind of get the idea of how you can start to create some cool IDM type feels within working on this. And then nothing is sidechained right now, so the more that you kind of add to that pumping feel, I usually group my kick and snare together and then go back. And it's kind of cool because when you're working with all of these elements, all of these melodic elements, so to speak, I know that they're all going to work together because they're all the same instrument. So if I really wanted to, I can, I guess I'll EQ this really quickly. And what I'll do is go back. And then I can unfreeze my harp, wherever that is. And I shouldn't have to worry about playing a melody that's going to work with this because I've used the harp for everything else. And then you can kind of combine all of these elements and create these really interesting maybe I'll duplicate this and just move this to there. And now I have this easy riff that I can go back and do micro editing to, or I can, well, do whatever I want really. But I've made this cool little riff just off of, you know, doing some resampling and making some ideas based off of this arpeggio. Yeah, I mean, you get some really neat textures out of this, and it's just, you know, a way for you to build blocks. So the next thing that I would be hearing on that fourth is some kind of like strings, and then we can build off of that, and hopefully you can start to see where things start to pan together, and it makes it really fun and very easy to create something melodic without necessarily having to feel like you need to know a lot of music theory. So my advice is to basically set up some kind of sound that you like as a bell or something that has a little bit of a percussive nature, oversaturate it with reverb, then reverse it, reverb it again, and then you can create this neat little pad texture out of it. From there, you can bounce it out to audio. You can go and find those transients, and I've shown you like a bunch of different ways that you can make some really neat stuff just out of, you know, one instrument. And I like doing this because it takes away from the need and the feel that I always run into of being overwhelmed with, you know, something like Omnisphere and having way too many sounds to try to fit through. And while all those sounds might sound great on their own, they might not fit together in the context of your track. So for me, you know, this is kind of cool. And so, you know, you basically start building all these blocks and the building components off of these things. And you have your ambience, you have your main instrument that still sounds great. And then you have these pads that help you fill out the rest of the spectrum. And that's kind of what it is, you know, is a lot of times you'll have one or two instruments that sound okay on their own, but you'll feel like your track is really needing some kind of space, or maybe not space. It needs some kind of depth. And focusing on doing things this way and using this resampling idea in this context might help you basically bridge that gap in between. So yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to add some strings on this and call it a day, but thank you so much for watching. Remember what I said at the beginning of the video about my Discord and all that stuff, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of this video, and happy producing.